Stream is up at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're live, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in Northeast Ohio. I'm Josh McClay, aka Omally from O'Malley's Adventure. That's Jason Harris, new Council at Large member. And this is Omally Live. I want to thank everybody for joining, whether you're watching live or in post. The number to contact the show is 330-809-1924, or you can email us at o'mallysadventure@yahoo.com. How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good.
So, we had a council member pass away, and you are the interim. Is that how they classify you, as being appointed per se, or voted on by whom?
Yeah, I guess I'd be the interim.
Okay. And Jason is a business owner here in Massillon, and I think you should tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, first of all, I'm filling the seat for Mylan Chauvin.
Okay.
Very dear friend of mine who passed away it was about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And he made city politics his daily, that's what he did.
Right.
And I'm just trying to fill these shoes right now.
Gotcha.
I'm going to take his vision, what he wanted to do. Me and him hung out quite a bit.
Right.
We went fishing. We hung out, had a beer
right.
every now and again. And I visited in the hospital. He was probably in the hospital like a good 6 weeks before he died.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this or that, try to not talk about cancer and all that.
Right.
Mylan and I got cancer together.
Right.
He helped me through some of the most difficult times in my life.
Sure.
I tried to help him as much as I could.
So you are a cancer survivor? Or are you in remission?
I am. I'm in remission.
Outstanding. So how long have you been in Massillon?
Well, I've been in Massillon my entire life except for the 7 years I was in the Marine Corps.
Oh, you were a Marine?
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was in the other branch of service.
Okay.
So, you say you're for 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
What'd you do in the Marines?
I was a saxophonist in the Marine Band.
Okay.
And PMO, or military police, was my secondary.
Gotcha.
Which never really came into any play until after 9/11. After 9/11, it was kind of a part-time job.
Right. So you were serving during 9/11?
Yes.
Any reserve time?
No reserve time.
No reserve time. So what did you do once you come out and got into private sector?
After I came out of the Marine Corps, I had a few odd jobs waiting for, step back a little bit. Before I got out of the Marine Corps, they put you through this class called TAMPS class.
Right.
And you probably know this because you got out at some point, I'm sure.
To make sure that you're going to adjust?
Well,
or what you would be good at?
When I got out, they were applying for state jobs for you. So
I didn't have anything like that.
Yeah, so two of the jobs were State Highway Patrol and Department of Corrections.
Okay.
And it had got to be like 4 or 5 months after I got out, and Department of Corrections were the first ones that called, so that's the one I took. I did actually get an offer from the State Highway Patrol, but I was already working for DRC. And
which facility did you work at?
It was the same pay. I worked in Cleveland for a little bit at the Northeast Pre-Release Center.
Yeah.
And I was going to quit, actually, because I hated it there.
Right.
And they realized my background and everything, so I got attached to a tactical team, and I started having to, go to the academy for this instructor spot. So I eventually accumulated so many instructor qualifications that they made me an instructor at the training academy.
Gotcha. So you say you were going to quit.
Yes.
So you end up staying.
Staying for 7 years.
Okay.
I got hurt on the job while operating inside of Toledo Correctional Institution.
Okay.
It's a long story. We don't have to go into
Right.
that now, but long story short, I was out for a number of months, and they gave me a disability separation hearing. And
Gotcha. So, what made you decide to open a shooting range? That's I'm going to say that's because I've had ideas of stuff like this, things I do online, but I don't think I've ever actually thought, man, I'm going to open a shooting range.
The first thought actually was to open a coffee shop.
I'm with you there. I've had those plans.
Because there was a local coffee shop that had just went out of business,
Mm-hmm.
and we were like, maybe we can make this work. Very soon after that, we figured out that we knew nothing about coffee.
Right.
So we're in talking, we had to figure out what we did know something about. And I knew quite a bit about firearms and how to teach and that kind of thing. So we kind of started down that road. It was going to be more of a teaching instructor, as far as Ohio concealed carry. But we also wanted to integrate firearm sales into that.
Mm-hmm.
Massillon was pretty much ripe for a firearms business because at the time the only firearms business was Dobransky on Wales.
Right.
And it just so happened the day that we opened downtown at Erie and Federal, they got robbed.
Right where the car backed into the...
Ended up closing, yeah.
Right.
So that is pretty much how it started. So our first year, which was really about 6 or 7 months, our first fiscal year,
Right.
We did about $100,000 in sales.
Right.
Which is, it's pretty good for a one-man enterprise.
Sure.
Because I'm the only one working the shop at that time. So the next year, sales, 2.5 times what we started at.
Right.
And then the next year after that, it was 2.5 times that number.
Right.
And at that point, it was like, it's time to think bigger.
Right.
I got in contact with Action Target,
Mm-hmm.
and they have this whole process of how to figure out if a range is going to work in a particular area. Demographics have to be right, population, how many rural communities around, because let's face it, sometimes you don't want to shoot inside, you want to shoot outside.
Right.
Figured it out, it was going to work. There weren't nearly enough shooting ranges around here for the population that we have within a 55-mile radius.
Right.
Which they say is about the farthest somebody's willing to drive to a shooting range.
Right.
And that was, now during all that, we needed to find a building.
Right.
There were a few buildings around town that I was considering, and the Salvation Army being right across the street from the police station, having been vacant for 4 years, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Sure.
We purchased that property for $80,000.
Wow. That's a pretty good deal.
Now, we did a $1.5 million renovation on it.
Sure.
To include the addition of the range.
Right.
We did have to tear down almost half the building.
Right.
To get it to marry up right with what we got, but so far so good. I mean, we're chugging along. The summertime is our our slowest time of the year.
Right.
The So right now it is slow time, but the downtown construction is making it dramatically worse. I mean,
Right.
summer sales numbers are down probably 60%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not small. That's pretty. That's over half.
Yeah.
So, um, so moving to the political side,
Okay.
you have ran in the past.
I did run in the last election.
Okay.
I lost by, I want to say 45 votes.
Okay. So what makes you want to get into politics? Is it just is it something that you've seen that you're like, you know what, that's something that needs addressed, or are you just a naturally political person?
What got me to run the first time was I just wanted to bring some sort of connection back between the city government and the people.
Sure.
I feel there's a huge disconnect there.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
The idea now, because I'll be honest with you, it was a godsend that I didn't win the last time.
Okay.
You know how
Unwrap that one for me. How does that work?
well, things happen for a reason. I'm a total believer in that.
Okay.
So I lost the election in December. Right after the election, I found out I had cancer.
Ah.
February, I started
Gotcha.
chemotherapy.
Right.
And I wasn't done with chemotherapy until July,
So you had quite a bit.
I'd have been out of commission.
Right. So, but with that experience, I'm going to try and tie them together. Your sales are down. You're on council now. What do you see as far as the future goes, and a fix for some of the problems that we're seeing right now, as far as bringing business to Massillon? You're a business owner. You're into politics now. What do you see as far as bringing business into Massillon?
Well, as far as economic development goes, I think we need to take a step back, and it's like if you're an alcoholic, you got to take a real look at what's going on and say,
Sure.
I have a serious problem here.
Right.
We need to take a step back and say, we have a serious problem here.
Right.
Now, and again, there was a gentleman that came up and spoke at Monday's city council meeting. There is some progress going on here. There is no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like as fast as we can get a business in here, there's another business that's going out of here.
Right.
We have to stem the tide in some way. Now, what way that is, there's 100 different ways to look at it. Do we spur economic development through tax incentives? Do we spur economic development through, just a couple ideas off the top of my head would be, we have something like 30 parks in this city.
Right.
Do we need that many?
It definitely needs to be questioned. It for sure needs to be questioned.
And if we don't need that many, can we sacrifice one or two of them to entice a large manufacturing corporation to come here?
Right.
With some sort of tax abatement?
Right.
Some questions to be asked for sure.
Absolutely. I can see that's not the first time I've heard that. And I'm on the inside looking out, and I can see where a lot of that really needs to be looked at. Like you said, and just to throw some numbers out, we have how many parks? 30-ish?
30-ish.
Okay, we have 2 full-time guys in the park department, and I believe 10 or 15 part-time guys in the summer.
It is a huge uphill job.
Right. So when you just from a maintenance standpoint,
it's impossible.
Yeah, it's driving a spike with a tack hammer.
It's impossible. It's an impossible job.
Right.
My buddy Steve Pedro,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he does it, but he
Right.
does it.
Yeah, he figures something out.
Yeah.
So, uh, speaking of parks, let's talk about the Resi. What's your thoughts on the Resi?
The Resi. Being a fisherman,
Right.
I do fish quite a bit. It's probably equally my favorite hobby is golf, but I grew up fishing the Resi. I grew up hanging out around the Resi. You know, I it's part of this town.
Right.
I it it really does break my heart to see it in the condition that it is. Now, mind you, they have done some work this week to mitigate some of the weeds and stuff around it, but as far as what I like to see done with it, number one, I'd like to see a more measured, more thought out, more. Um, we really need to focus on getting input from the people. That being said, we need more options.
Right.
The Resi is a resource to this town. It shouldn't be looked at as some sort of debt.
Right.
It's a serious resource.
Right.
Are we making the best of this resource?
Right.
I don't think we are.
Absolutely. Yep.
The amount of land that's down there, the amount of parking that could be down there,
Sure.
are we using this huge piece of property that we have to maintain to its best?
To its full potential.
Yeah.
Sure. So, and my thought always was, if you have that many parks, and you do have some of the newer ones like Community Park, they're okay. Some of the older ones like the Reservoir, for sure, it needs some type of work there. Um, but the part that sort of bothered me was, and I didn't know this until just this past year, I had Blaine on the show, and he was talking about how the Department of Natural Resources stepped in and said that that top layer had to be taken off. And then he shows me a picture of a big D9 sitting on top of it. If it can hold the weight of that, why does the top row have to be taken off? Why is that? Why is it structurally not sound? Because when I first heard about it, I was like, you know what? It's the Reservoir. It's old. It's dated. I mean, that thing was put in the 1800s. Maybe it does need it. And I didn't think anything of it. So I started seeing pictures of how they took it down, and I'm thinking, now wait a second. Something don't seem right with that. But now that we're here, something, like you said, maybe more options as far as how it's going to be used after it's finished. I think, because I think at the time, there was only 3 options on the table. There was like I don't want to say good, better, best, but one was cheap, mid-priced, and expensive. And the most expensive was bringing it back to, I believe, close to what it was before they'd done the work to tear it down.
Well, they put a $5 million price tag on it.
Right.
$5 million is a whole lot for the citizens of Massillon
Right.
to swallow.
I think the sticker shock was
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more than people actually wanting it back to the way it was.
That's $5 million of misspent money over 20 to 30 years.
That's where I was going, because they've had their tax since, I believe, '93. And what did they say the number was? How much has it generated since it was passed?
50 plus million.
Right. So, yeah, there's some issues with that.
I know some of the candidates running for office are talking about wanting to disband the Parks Board and all that. I don't know about that. I'm gonna take a look at that. I know for a fact that included in that levy for the parks, there is something in the Ohio Revised Code that says there has to be a parks board,
Right.
or like the parks had to be under the control of the parks board or the safety service director, something like that.
Right.
And I think to disband the park board, you'd have to vote on a repeal and
Of the tax itself.
yeah,
Right.
and
I don't see that happening.
I no.
I don't see the citizens repealing that. I mean, you would have to have a very good sales pitch for getting rid of that.
I mean, and not just the aesthetics or completely changing the landscape of the resi around. I'm not really talking about that, but I mean, you have a waterfall there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a resource.
Sure.
I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with this.
Right.
You know, why are we forced into this box of three choices?
Right.
I mean, I kept pretty good track of what was going on at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when all those choices came out, and it just seemed rushed. It seemed
Pushed.
Yeah. What are we, 2 years post that now?
Right.
You know, there's had to have been some other idea come up. There's had to have been some other, somebody's had to look into something.
Right.
For a funding source, for, I just cannot believe
that it was narrowed down to just 3 and that's it. And at that, I looked at those 3 options. None of them seemed, well, like you said, using it to its full potential. None of them were close. And I'm thinking, well, before it's all said and done, once they get some type of growth there, because I don't know if you've been down there, it's wet. And he will remain nameless, but in the spring he went down there to check to see how wet it was. And he got stuck. And he was worried that he was not coming out without help. So, I mean, there was water there.
I know what you're talking about.
Right. There was water there for a long time. Mm-hmm. That's not just going to just dry up overnight.
Right.
But I think, well, in the next 4 years, that's going to be something people point to, which I'm going to kind of use that to lead into the next topic.
Okay.
The hospital.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on the hospital?
The hospital, whether I believe the hospital should have been purchased by the city, is irrelevant. We have a situation right now that needs to be dealt with yesterday.
Yeah.
The amount of money that this is going to start costing the citizens of Massillon is ridiculous. It's outrageous.
Yeah. Well, I think at last count it was $6,800 a day. I believe that was the last count. And that works out to about $204,000 a month.
Well, I just passed a appropriations bill for that for $400 and some thousand this past Monday. So, and we got $2 million something from Olin Hospital.
Right. Well, and I was talking. I actually did a small piece on it. A lot of people are under the assumption that we bought it for $1, but we didn't. I mean, when it closed, the first thing they did is they appropriated $100,000 for legal fees. And then when it was done, we assumed $624,000 in debt. So we actually bought it for $724,001. And we're getting to a point where we've moved far enough away from it. People are starting to forget. You know, this winter will be, 2 years that it's been closed.
Mm-hmm. So,
my personal opinion is you will not see a full-service hospital there again by a private owner. Not a full service. No way. I've been inside the building a couple times. It's even the new part. It's somebody would have to be there quick, and I mean quick. There- we help move furniture. They have trash cans catching rainwater. So there's, like I said, it would have to be soon.
So I've been on the job for 4 days,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I have no idea what the mayor's has going on, whether this VA thing is a real thing or if we have other suitors per
Right.
se. I don't care who it is. We need to get rid of this property as fast as possible.
It's a boat anchor.
You know, at this point, you almost have to take a look at how much money do we have left from what Altman gave us and say, this is never going to be a hospital. Nobody's going to buy this property. Do I want it to turn into doctor's hospital?
Right.
I'll say my answer is no.
Right.
So do we take the rest of the money that Altman gave us and tear it down?
You know, and I'm for holding out possibly for the VA, but if the VA would say no, you cut your losses.
Well, how long do we wait for the VA?
Well,
$1 million of tax money?
well,
2 million?
I was gonna say because now the time does have a dollar amount
Yeah.
attached to it.
Because
I
it's
don't know.
running out quick. I think. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's somewhere over a little over $1 million that we have left of the money that Altman gave us.
Well, that clock's ticking quick, like to the tune of 5 months. That'd be about $1 million.
Yeah.
So let's see. Downtown streetscape and maintenance. I'm going to clump those two together because most of the times when I talk about it, one leads right into the other. Some people are a fan of it, and I don't think the actual question is, will it be nice, or is it going to be aesthetically pleasing? I don't. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants downtown to look that way. But for myself, you're going to build it. How do you maintain it? I mean, sure, when it's initially done, it'll look great. But there's always going to be a cost of maintenance. Just like with parks or taking a hospital on, there's going to be maintenance. So what's your thoughts on streetscape, and will it be able to be maintained?
Well, if the current condition of our roadways here in Maslin are any future view of what streetscape is going to look like, it should answer your question right there.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that the street department or the guys working the street crew are doing a bad job. We live in Ohio.
Right.
You know, you have to replace a roadway every so often,
Right.
or it's going to look like what it does now.
Sure.
You know, I'm ecstatic that the city is repairing the roads that they are this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that, you know, downtown is getting a makeover.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to be happy with everything.
Right.
The idea of this project, I think, is to bring Maslin more into the,
New millennia.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to say whether, well, I mean, it's not hard to say. You run a plow into these things a couple times,
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
it's not going to look good.
No. And I think that was one of the biggest concerns working for the street department when they brought us the ideas. You know, we were like, Will it look great? Yes. Will the wheelchair accessible curbing, will that be good as far as the people that use it? Absolutely. But if you're plowing that parking lane, I mean, you can't just stop there and lift your plow because all the snow that you just pushed, that's
It's
where
right
it's gonna,
there.
it's gonna be right there. I think there's gonna be some maintenance issues that will have to be addressed, especially in the wintertime, especially.
In the next couple months, I want to focus my efforts in council on looking at some new innovative technology that can possibly help this road problem.
Right.
I think it would be. I think it's going to be good for the city.
Okay. As far as resurfacing or as far as snow and ice?
Resurfacing.
Resurfacing. I'm going to say, well, there was 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years where we didn't have a resurfacing program. And then there were almost 2 years where instead of patching potholes, we used grindings because we didn't have money for patch. And there were a lot of people coming out in winter. They were like, well, yeah, it was a bad winter. Well, no, it wasn't a bad winter. If you don't patch the existing holes, they get bigger. They will fill with ice, and a hole that's this big gets this big quick. And I think now they're trying to play catch up. And I think there was good intention with the tax and restarting a program, but they're way behind, and then I don't know if you looked at like 17th Street Northwest, that was finished last year. We're already patching it this year.
Yeah.
So being able to do a project and actually do it right start to finish, if you're just putting a skim coat on something, it's a skim coat. It might look great when it's first done, but 6 months later, if there was a hole and you pave over it without repairing that hole, 6 months later that hole's back, and that's the way it works.
So before I even thought about doing this,
Right.
back after, I lost the election, what is the one thing that everyone talks about in this town? The roads.
Right.
Why do they talk about the roads? In my opinion, they talk about the roads because they pass a tax on the roads. Everybody in city government got a new vehicle, and the roads still look like
Doo-doo.
the old roads.
Right.
Now, the two have nothing to do with each other, for the most part.
For the most part.
The reason why the citizens still are wondering, where's my road and why am I still driving over potholes, is because yes, they are doing something, but they're not. The citizens aren't seeing it.
Right. Right. They're when people pay for something, it should be quick. I shouldn't say quick. The result should be fairly immediate, and what we're
Somewhat noticeable.
right. We're what 2 or 3 years into this tax, 2 years into it,
Yeah.
and like I said, there are roads being done, but someone was asking me about the southwest side. I don't know if you've seen the list of roads that are proposed to be paved, but there was only like 4 or 5 on the southwest. Now there's 4 sections to Maslin, and it's sort of a bad thing to work for the street department right now, because there's people paying a lot of money, and they say, well, why aren't you doing this? And once upon a, and this was back I started in 96, mid to late 90s. If there were roads that need to be paved, they would go to the guy that was in charge of that section. They'd say, what's the worst roads in your section? We would give the boss a list of roads. And those generally were at least mentioned to the engineers as far as the final plan goes, as far as what would be repaved. Well, then we went through that whole section of time where nothing got done. There just wasn't any money in the budget. And now that we're back, people come to me and I was like, we don't even get asked anymore. I understand why they're mad, but I'm just the guy in the street sweeper, man. I have no input there anymore. And I think where there's a disconnect between the people and government, I think there is a disconnect now between the people doing the work and the department heads. I think there's a huge gap starting. And I would say it's been probably the past decade that started. And and like I said, people come to me and they're like, why? And I was like, they don't even ask anymore. So I think that might be an avenue, to pursue. If you want this done, just ask, and have it come down almost like a chain of command. We do the work, goes back up the chain of command, it's done. Mm-hmm. But there's almost like a break off, So, but with the roads, yes, and that was for 5 years, wasn't it?
3 or 5, I can't remember.
3 or 5, yeah. And I think it's going to be a hard sell to get it passed.
To get it passed again?
To get it passed again. I think it's going to be a very hard sell.
I totally agree with you. And that's the reason why I think now more than ever, we need to look into some new technology maybe.
Sure.
To number one, save the taxpayer some money. But
Right.
at the second time, get stuff done a heck of a lot quicker.
Sure.
I am by no means an expert on this, and I'm just learning, the difference between a total grind off to chip and seal to, all that stuff. I'm a quick learner and I come up to speed pretty fast.
Right.
But in that industry, in where we are located in the United States, a road should be totally redone every 10 years.
Right.
Maslin roads, to my knowledge, are on a 20 to
Ish.
25 year.
Well, I've been with the city 23 years, and I know there are roads that haven't been done since I started. Now, there's not a lot of them. Well, maybe we've got, 180, 200 miles of road, something like that.
Well, my road hasn't been done since 1992.
Right. That's becoming common. Well, the more time goes by, obviously.
Now, I'll tell you, usually the street guys come down the road and they fill the patch, they fill the potholes pretty good. And it's usually good by the time winter time starts.
Right.
And then it gets destroyed.
Right.
To the point now where it's...
Right.
And it gets that way because, late August when school starts, all the bus drivers want to miss the light at 17th Street and come up my road,
Mm-hmm.
To skate the light. Now, between all the buses,
Garbage trucks.
all the garbage trucks, the 18-wheeler that comes through there to resupply the business at the end of the road.
Right.
I don't live on a main thoroughfare.
Right.
I live on a side street.
Right.
And this is all getting on my little side street
Right.
that doesn't even have sidewalks on it.
Right. And that's I would have to say one of the biggest problems we have currently as far as use goes, the garbage trucks are, if you see, because Kimball, I don't believe they use any small trucks, but if you would watch them go down, say, Corman Northeast, and some of the little ones that go off the side, you can see where those trucks come to a stop, right? And if you're there when they do drive by, you'll see the road ripple. Um, I think some type of weight limit. I mean, obviously you have to pick up the garbage. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
But the size of the truck you use, maybe that's something to explore. Because they, like I said, there was a noticeable difference in certain areas. Because I don't know if you've seen the size of the trucks they use, but they're pretty big. And when they're loaded, I mean, they're heavy. So, lost my train of thought. Anyway, but that would be one area that should probably be at least be explored as far as things that damage the roads. I mean, freeze thaw. We're in Ohio. You can't control that.
Mm-hmm.
But the types of vehicles and the routes that they take. You know, I mean, right now with some of the projects we have, they have to go certain ways just because they can't use the normal route. But when that's done, I mean, I think looking at routes and weight limits would probably be a good place to start. Because, like you said, if you're on a side street and you got something that big coming through, that road was never designed for that. And if it's on an older part of town, it really wasn't designed for that. So, anyway, let's take that and move into where do you see the city in 5-ish years? And I'm going to bring this up real quick because it is for sure that you are going to run in November. And that's why I'm going to ask you where you want to see the city in 5 years, because you're going to be here at the last part of this term. And potentially in November, you will be part of the next administration.
Right.
So where do you see the city? Where do you want to see the city as far as any of these things go? Which direction do you want to see it move?
Number one, I am a representative of and for the people.
Right.
If it's not really about what I want. It's
Okay.
about what the people want.
Okay.
You know, my focus in council is going to be, I think, the main two things that the people want. Something that will fix our roads faster.
Right.
And save us money.
Right.
And two, we need to take a hard look at some of the money that we're spending and why we're spending it.
Sure.
I'm not talking about paying bills. I'm not talking about, any of the everyday stuff.
Right.
I'm talking about projects that maybe right now probably
isn't the best time.
Shouldn't be done.
Right. I'm with you there. I can see that. Just went brain dead again. Anyway, that is the first time anybody has answered that way. Anytime I ask somebody, they always have something that they want to see or whatnot. So myself, and I've said this on the show before, I'm a very libertarian type, and that made my day. So I'm not giving out endorsements yet. However, I'm coming down the final stretch as far as the interviews go with people that are running.
Okay.
So I believe
I know a couple people that you have had on,
right,
but I haven't seen all of them by
Right.
any stretch. The disconnect
right,
that I was talking about earlier, it is so much there right now.
right,
Not only on the local level, but on the national level too.
absolutely,
If you are listening to this, watching this, don't be afraid to talk to me, to email me,
right,
to call me. I'd rather have I'd rather have good, positive phone calls at times
Right.
where you want to talk about what's going on with the city than some of the other calls that I've had.
Right.
You know, and I've only been on the job for 4 days.
Right. Right. So,
Um, I'm a downtown business owner. You know, I'm not always in the showroom,
right.
but I'm somewhere around where you can talk to me.
Right.
And if I'm not there, leave your name, a number. I will call you back.
Sure.
The hardest part of this job is remembering that you are a representative of the people.
Sure.
And I think some have lost sight of that.
Sure. I think on both sides.
True.
I think there are some citizens that think, well, you just take that magic wand and you just fix it. And it doesn't work that way. And I think sometimes people on council lose track, like you said. I think maybe stepping back for a minute, I think that's probably the best analogy I've heard yet. Everybody just step back for a minute and look. Find out what is actually the problem.
Are we spending the people's money the way it needs to be spent?
Right.
Or should it be spent?
Right. Should it be spent at all?
Not because we have money,
Right.
we're going to spend money.
Right. And I, you know, there are certain schools of thought in politics that do believe that if you have it, you should spend it. And I also think good intentions pave the road. So that's all I have. Do you have anything else that you want to put out there as far as, I'm going to bring your election sign up again.
Okay.
But you say they can contact you at your shop?
You can contact me via the store. The phone number is 330-481-4409. You can contact me through the AJ Harris Tactical Facebook page. We're closing in on 6,000 followers for that. 70% are local.
That's good numbers.
You can contact me via email. For now, I'm going to use the email. Just use the shop email, ajharristactical@gmail.com.
Okay. When it shows over, I'm going to put all that in the description below, if that's all right with you.
Perfect.
That way, when people look it up, they can see that.
Perfect. I think going forward, this idea that everything's one-sided, Republican, Democrat. I think in local government, you really just need to step back and say, is this good for the city?
Right.
Or are we going to look back at this in 10 years and go, why the hell did
Right.
we spend this money
Right.
this way?
Right. Yeah, because once that regret's out there's no backs on it. You can't say, we made a mistake, let's just get that money back and we'll move on to something else. That never happens. So it's a bad boat to be in.
Yep.
So
I appreciate you having me out.
Absolutely.
And anytime you want me back on, I'll come back on.
Absolutely. We'll do it again before the election. I think that would be a good time.
Sounds good.
And probably October-ish, September, October, depending on how the weather is. Every once in a while, I don't know if you've noticed, Mother Nature doesn't play nice.
No, not lately.
And sometimes with my job, if it gets cold quick,
yeah,
sometimes it gets busy quick. So
I understand.
Anyway, that's all I got. That's
all
all you got. Until next time, stay sharp, keep a tight shot group, and rock on.